Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Scott Sugden, Product and Technology Outreach Manager. Thank you for joining us today's webinar all about the LA2Xi, L-Acoustics' first integration-specific amplified controller. So today's webinar, we're going to go through the LA2Xi and how we can use it. And to talk more about the LA2Xi today, we've got Germain Simon coming to us from now slightly further outside of Lyon than usual. Germain, how are you today?
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon. I'm great today. It's been quite sunny these last days, so I may get a little bit of a more tinted head than usual. But I'm happy to be with you today, and thank you again for all joining us on those very regular webinars now, and hopefully you've learned a lot and still eager to learn more. Thank you.
Excellent. And Germain, we're going to go through the different aspects of the LA2Xi, obviously, and to help us out in this webinar answering your questions in multiple languages from around the world, we've got first and foremost Alex Soto coming to us from Guadalajara, Mexico. Alex, happy Cinco de Mayo. It's great to see you.
Hi, Scott. How are you? I hope everything is fine over there. Well, I'm fine. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Como siempre, aquí estamos para atenderlos en español. Sean todos bienvenidos. Thank you, Scott.
And Alex, the most important question of the day that I expect to come in all on the panel is Pacifico, Dos Equis, or Corona. Which one is your choice for today's cerveza?
Ooh, well, I would say Victoria.
Ah. Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Dan Bowers, thank you for joining us as well. Dan, it's good to see you again. Everything's well in Wisconsin, I hope.
Yes, thank you, Scott. We actually had warm weather this weekend where I have fully instituted the sandal/flip-flop footing for the rest of the year, even though it's 45 degrees Fahrenheit today, but I am still sticking with it. So, and then to join in the conversation, I would probably lean towards Pacifico right now, but I know I will hit a lot of flack for choosing that option. But it's good to be here, and this should be a great webinar.
And last and not least, back to the homeland, Julien, it's good to see you again on this webinar. How are things in Paris today? Oh, Julien, your mic is muted. You have to buy everyone a Corona. So, Julien.
Not again. Hello, everybody. Very welcome to everybody. I'm very glad to moderate this presentation presented by Scott and Germain on the LA2Xi. It's gonna be fun. Everything is well in Paris. We are back to a normal weather, which is rainy and cold, and so we feel Parisian again. So all good there.
Excellent. Thank you, Julien. All right. Well, everyone, as always, if you have any questions about the LA2Xi, if you have any questions about what we're talking about today, please don't hesitate to put those in the question and answer. We'll try our best to answer as many as we can, both on air and in that. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe button below if you're watching this live or pardon me, later on YouTube. And we will see you guys and answer some of those questions along the way. Germain, off to you, sir, first. So why don't you get us started on the LA2Xi?
All right, will do. So maybe before talking about LA2Xi, there's one couple of things that I would like to highlight is with these past webinars, you've seen that we've focused a bit more of our efforts into the installation market. You may have seen that through the Cara 2 video where we introduced the fact that there will be an install version of that Cara 2. You are now familiar with the A series install version of product. So there's a whole a list of products and features within our softwares that will complete a little bit our range of products in our catalog that are dedicated to installation projects. And for that matter, there was maybe one thing that was lacking within our catalog so far was an amplified controller that was specific, was built specifically for installed project, which means many different things, and which could actually mean different things for different people, depending on if you're an integrator, depending if you're a consultant working on consultant-driven product or design build projects. or any other projects that may relate to a permanent installation. So through this presentation, we'll look at all those aspects that make that amplified controller quite versatile into this install world a little bit. But it really completes the amplified controllers family within our catalog, and to address maybe a section that were not properly addressed before, or that was a bit more struggling to address before with the products that were part of our catalog. So we are very happy to fill a little bit that gap, introducing a brand new and very unique product within our range. You'll see that despite the maybe a minimized look that it has, it shares very great premium components. It shares the same DSP engine as the flagship LA2Xi, for instance, but it kind of offers a bit more flexibility in terms of its architecture. And let's look at this into a bit more in detail. So right there is the front panel of the LA2Xi, which, as you can see, is quite streamlined compared to products that you may have seen before from our amplified controller range. But let's focus a little bit of the architecture of that amplified controller. So it's a 4x4 amplified controller. You can see, as with our latest members of our amplified controllers range, the LA2Xi comes with analog, AES, and AVB inputs. 4 inputs of each of the sort. Actually, for AVB, you can have one input stream of AVB of up to 8 channels. So you can receive up to 8 channels through one AVB stream. But where LA2Xi stands out a bit more of our range of products is its output modes, its flexibility in terms of output modes. So it's a 4x4 architecture, meaning 4 input, 4 output. But not only. Actually, if you need a smaller count of your amplified controller, LA2Xi can become a 4x2 amplified controller with 2 output channels by simply bridging pairs of output channels into 2 different ones. So we call that mode actually BTL, so bridge tied load, which kind of corresponds to bridging 2 channels to create a more powerful channel that is able to provide twice the maximum output voltage of each channel. So basically giving you 2 output channels of higher output power. So LA2Xi can be a 4x4 we've seen, a 4x2 with bridged output channel, but also a 4x1 output channel. So meaning that we combine all those 2 bridge channels already into what we call a parallel bridge tied load. So it's another operating mode that provides you with 1 single output channel of very high output power. So really addressing kind of different needs you may have into your installation projects, whether it's multiple products that require a smaller output power capability, whether it's you only need 2 channels, or if you need one very powerful channel, then you can use the 4x1. And actually, you can even mix and match and create a 4x3 output channel with 2 channels in single end mode and 1 channel which is bridged in bridge tied load. So regarding all this power configuration and how does it relate in terms of power capacity, we'll have a closer look at that in the next slides. But let's compare that to our range that we have right now. So LA2Xi sits on top of LA4X and LA12X on this picture. I think from the first look, we can directly see its compact size. So it's a 1U amplified controller. We have used 2U amplified controllers in the past, from the very first LA4, LA8, and all the way to the LA4X and LA12X. LA2Xi is our first 1U amplified controller. You see there is no front panel. There is, or the front panel, should I say, is streamlined, is very minimalistic. There is no screen in there. There is no button specifically to press, or too many LEDs to light up for showing loads or anything of that sort. It's very minimalistic in the way that it integrates very simply and takes even less rack space, where actually maybe today rack room is quite of a good real estate to consider, I would say. There are a couple of dual color LEDs that can light up for monitoring power, LNet, which is the connection for control, so connection to LA Network Manager, for instance, the status, operation status of the amplified controller, as well as the 4 output channels with a dual color. So you can have green, orange, black, orange and red, sorry, colors on this front panel. So very efficient reuse of rack space for the L2Xi, but I think what's very more focus of towards installation projects is the rear panel of that amplified controller. So once again, now one first look really tells how much designed to or specific to install projects this LA2Xi is. Only terminal blocks for inputs and outputs for GPIOs, as well as for a 24-volt backup power supply for the DSP card. So I'll go through all of these quite quickly. So basically what remains out of these terminal blocks are so power supply, obviously, but also these two Ethernet connections that are AVB Ethernet connectors. So the reason why we decided to maintain them in these very lockable, safe connectors is that we do not pass control only anymore. We pass control and audio. So we want it to be as safe and strong as possible when we connect those kind of connectors. So that's why we have a EtherCon types of connectors to be very safe on that matter. So in terms of terminal blocks, looking at the from left to right of the picture, we have the outputs that are all the way to the left with a wiring diagram explaining how to use the bridge modes or how to cable your amplified controller so that you have the bridge mode or the full bridge mode, the parallel bridge type mode. Right to the next to these output blocks are the 24-volt backup supply, which is used to keep the DSP card alive in case of power failure. So that really helps into boosting and making sure that the LA2Xi stays, or at least the DSP side stays alive and recover extremely fast from a power outage, for instance. Right to the next of that is a set of 4 GPIOs that are freely assignable. So with a GPI, so the input section, you can trigger, for instance, mute status, maybe change a configuration or other actions that you could put on the amplified controllers. As for the output for the GPIO, sorry, that could serve to monitor the amplifier itself, or also the output channel statuses. That could be for, I would say, I would name it for PAVA purposes, for instance. So something interesting here to keep in mind is that being designed in this way with a 1U with an airflow which is streamlined as well, we have an amplifier controller that creates a lower noise floor than other amplified controller within our range, which make them kind of particularly interesting for close proximity audience. I don't know, maybe a private auditorium or something of that sort. So all these ideas will come a bit later into this presentation, where we will present some of the applications that are very supported well with us with this L2Xi. All right, so Flexible amplification, this is really the highlight of that amplified controller, how flexible it is. Let's have a look at it quickly. So initially, the primary goal, the original design of the LA2Xi was really to offer a amplified controller platform that was an adequate solution for smaller loudspeakers. So providing a matching power to smaller loudspeakers. When I say smaller loudspeakers, we're talking about X4i or 5XT. Some speakers that are often seen as distributed field speakers, say front fields, under balcony fields, even surround, sometimes overheads, any type of field distribution of speakers where you have multiple amounts of fields side by side. Where we can see here on the picture with an LA4X, you can have actually up to 16 X4i. So here is showing an LA4X with 4 X4i connected on one output channel. A simple graph here on the right-hand side of the slide shows that the power available out of the LA4X is completely oversized compared to the power required by these 4 X4i on one output channel. And that count would be exactly the same if you had 16 X4i out of the 4 output channels of the LA4X. So this directly translates into a oversized, maybe amplified controller used here, which means that it's oversized in different means. It's maybe oversized in terms of weight, in terms of rack space, in terms of energy as well. But also in terms of budget. So we have come with something that answers directly that issue that we have, and that's the LA2Xi. So the power available by the LA2Xi matches the power which is required by smaller loudspeakers. And you see here an example with X4i, but it would be exactly the same with 5XT, actually. So in these scenario, LA2Xi brings quite a lot of improvement. So once again, in terms of rack space savings, in terms of power needs as well, but also in terms of price per channel. So that was the core design of the LA2Xi, but we wanted to make it not purely an amplified controller made for smaller products, but we wanted to have something which has a bit more flexibility or a bit more things to bring to the installed projects. And that actually comes to the fact that you can bridge channels together. So reduced power for larger, that you can use the LA2Xi for larger products as well, not only for smaller products as we introduced with X4i and 5XT, but also for larger ones. So here's an example with an LA4X used to power 4 X12. So it definitely matches the power capacity of the LA4X, definitely matches the power required for the X12 in a normal configuration, in an application when you require the full energy of the X12. So now let's imagine an application, a situation where you have the X12 for a specific need, say a specific dispersion coverage. So you know X12 has a 60 degree by 90 degrees. You want the speaker to be exactly that coverage. So you be used as a field, maybe an outfield system, but it doesn't mean that you require the full SPL capability of the product. And this is where actually giving LA4X will give you an over-exceeding quantity of energy that you do not require. So you will probably use a -4, -6, up to -8 dB sometimes on those larger loudspeakers. So LA2Xi can also be used on this 4x4 architecture, so with 4 output channel, to power larger loudspeakers, so such as the X12 here, with a reduced SPL, with a reduced maximum SPL, meaning that you do not require the full capacity of the X12. You will probably have a -6 or -8 on your LA Network Manager groups applied to the X12. Well, LA2Xi gives you a solution that matches the power needs to these applications. So that could be field systems that are like I introduced with the X12 with the LA4X, but it could be also for private auditoriums, maybe a close proximity where you need once again the coverage, when you need the bandwidth of your system. X12 is a very quite of a 4-inch coaxial product, so you have all the warmth, you have all the bandwidth extension that you require to cover most applications, almost any application, but maybe you don't need the overall SPL capability. The idea at L-Acoustics is always to build loudspeakers with the highest SPL capability possible, but some application may not require everything. So LA2Xi is a great option here for that kind of situation. But let's say now that you are in this configuration where your X12 is your main system. You're in, say, a SMAC, as we call it in France, or a multi-purpose smaller public venues or other theatrical venues of the sort. You have a main left-right system, which is composed of 2 elements, one X12 on the right, one X12 on the left. And because the venue is slightly larger than the one we referenced before, because the program materials require the full capacity of the X12, then LA2Xi can become as well your accompanying amplified controller for that solution. If you were to use LA4X, you would probably waste 2 of those output channels. So if you want to bring back that SPL requirement with the X12, you can bridge the channels of the LA2Xi and obtain a maximum SPL required for the X12. So a very small comparison, channel count, or it basically answers the need for channel count, or it answers the need for output power capability. If you need, if you use only 2 loudspeakers, then you can bridge output channels. If you want to use the maximum SPL of your X12 and you have only two of them, bridging that channels on the L2Xi is the best way to go. So system designs like in small, maybe a multi-purpose or education or maybe hospitality venues, they often are designed based on this left-right system with a compact.
Germain, we lost you there for a second. So while we wait for you to get back, what Germain, oh, it sounds like you're back. Can you hear us now?
Am I back? Yep.
You're back.
I think I am. So, almost the end. That I was sure you soon to join us, Scott. So I'll just introduce the last part here. We introduced the fact that L2Xi could be a 4x1 output channel as well, and that can very handy in some situations where you only need one output, very high output channel in terms of amplifier control. Let's imagine a project when you have those 2 X12s that we discussed just in the slides before as a main system, and you want to give it a little bit of the lowest octave bands and getting a little bit more boost in the low frequency domain, you will be adding an case 28, for instance, alone. So case 28 requires normally the LA12X to drive only one enclosure per output channel. So let's imagine you only have one case 28 in your design. You would have to have an LA12X and only use one output channel of it. Or you can always have 2, maybe X12 on channel 2 and channel 3 of LA12X, which still remains only 3 out of 4 output channels that you'll use. So LA2Xi is another solution here. It's another answer to this kind of problematic situations we have. By combining all 4 channels together, you reach the output power required to power very large loudspeakers such as the KS28, for instance. So I think that explains a little bit how flexible that amplifier could be, and how it ensures type of multiple maybe blocking situations that some of you may have encountered before. But maybe giving it a little bit more of a live situation using sound vision may gives us even more idea on how that LA2Xi can answer some situations we have. Scott, do you want to jump into a design that we've made to help supporting those facts?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that transition, Jamal. I think what you are highlighting is really interesting. Obviously, we have a platform that is designed for the smallest products in our lineup, which is the X4i and the 5XT. Were often the smallest amplifier we used to offer. The LA4X was still more power than required, or gives you the flexibility to say utilize a great sounding speaker with a bit less output for certain applications. That's a really neat use case, and I think that's the first one I want to dig into. Is I've actually got a bit of a model here that we put together. It's a nice model of a performing arts center, and this venue is already installed virtually with some Cara 2, which is fantastic, which is a great product for here to help keep the energy off the walls where we've got a pretty narrow venue. So Cara 2 is going to be a great fit for that. In the Cara 2, we would amplify with the LA4X or LA2Xi amplified controller. And in that, we would have 2 or 3 enclosures per amplifier circuit. So that's a very traditional configuration. What's interesting, though, is the sound designer for this particular venue wanted to obviously have that really fantastic full range sound down front. So they chose to use X8 as the front fill. And the goal here was to have the same full range sound that you get out of the main PA for those people in the first 2 or 3 rows, and not have, say, less bandwidth out of a smaller speaker. And that's really quite nice. And one of the things I might do as a sound designer real quickly is, say, model up and just take a look at the SPL capability of, say, each individual zone, because one of the things my front fill has to do is be able to keep up with the output of the main PA. So if I take a look here, in front, we're talking about the SPL A weighted of 102 or 103, somewhere in that neighborhood. And can my front fill keep up? And that's not doing too bad. In fact, right down front where that front fill is going to be seated, it's 108. So that X8 might be a bit overkill in terms of its SPL capability, but we really want it for that full range aspect that the X8 offers. So that's good. But there's one other thing we have to look at, and Sound Vision has a really great tool to help you with this. And what it is actually a headroom calculator. And this headroom calculator tells you the amount of headroom based on your current DSP settings within Sound Vision. So in fact, if I click on this Cara 2 array over here, what we'll see is that the headroom available in the low frequency is 7.5 dB, and in the high frequency driver, it's 6.38. So we've engaged auto filtering that's used up a bit of the headroom, or 1.4 dB. So by default, a product like Cara has 8 dB of headroom in Sound Vision. So Sound Vision is assuming you're sending a certain amount of level from your console, and that is actually 0 dBu analog equivalent from your console. And so it's assuming that my console is sending 0 dBu. And that's great. And we actually even have a tool in Sound Vision here called Find Max Gain, and that'll actually turn the system up until the first thing hits limit. And in this case, the first thing to hit limit is actually my front fill today. So the reason is, by default, something like an X8 or a 5XT or an X4i has only 4 dB of headroom by default. That's just its default setting. And so we have a bit less headroom here than we do here, all right? So the front fills already seem a bit loud overall to me, so we probably can turn them down. I'm going to turn this group down about 8 dB, and then I'm going to unhide all 7 of my front fill. Great. Okay, so I've got 7 front fill to get a nice even coverage for these people in the first row, and now I see that the SPL right in the first row here is 101. That was right about what it was when we had the house right PA on, so that's probably a good place. The dilemma now is I now have 12 dB of headroom in my front fill, and as Germain was saying, one of the applications is to use a speaker you choose for its coverage or, say, bandwidth, but maybe you don't need all of the power. And so what we can actually do in Sound Vision now if I select, for instance, this center front fill and go to electronic settings, we see that same 12 dB of high frequency and low frequency headroom. We see that we're using the LA4X amplified controller. I can switch it to the LA2Xi single-ended, and I now see that I've lost 4 dB of output in terms of its headroom. So it's going to run into limit 4 dB sooner. So now my front fill has 8 dB of headroom, and my main PA has 6.38. So the first thing to limit now is my main PA. So that's a much better match in terms of amplification for the need, and it's going to save a bit of budget. So instead of having to use one LA4X to power these 7 X8, I can do it with one LA2Xi. So it's a really great case, and you can actually see that directly in Sound Vision. The second scenario here at this venue, because of its shape, the designer was a little bit concerned at the very last row, say for those events that are very dialogue centric. And they wanted to have a bit of a fill back there, so we actually have a bit of a delay just to lift the vocal support. And in fact, to get the position available, it was on a catwalk back here, and we ended up using an A10i wide. So that's the A series, and we're just lifting the SPL in the back just ever so slightly. Let's go ahead and set this down a little bit, and I'm going to turn off my front fill. So in this case, obviously, we needed the full power capability of the A10 in order to achieve the matching performance to the main PA. So I have 6.5 dB of headroom here. I happen to have 6.5 dB, 6.38, so they're right on the match there. And if I take a look at house right, in the back, the main PA is doing about 95, so I want to have a little bit of a lift there. So this delay is going to do another 95. We put the two together, that's going to work out really well. But to get the full power out of an A10, we either need to use an LA4X, and we would only use 2 of the 4 channels on this amplifier, or we could use the LA2Xi in bridged mode. And as soon as we do that, let me step out of here just to speed this up. As soon as we switch between the LA4X and the LA2Xi bridged mode, we see that there's no difference in headroom. So we're using the 4-channel amplifier and turning it into a 2-channel high-power amplifier for the A10 for the delay in this particular application. So all of this can be done in Sound Vision, and you guys can take a look in advance to see what the impact will be, for instance, of using the LA2Xi in single-ended mode. We're going to lose now about 4 dB of output, or if we did it in bridged tied load mode, so in using 2 of the amp channels. So it's a really great use case for this delay where we only needed 2 amp channels total to make it work, and it was a much more economical solution than the LA4X in this particular application. So just to remind everyone, I've got a little slide here I'll show you if I can find it. Oops, that was the wrong button. Apologize. There we go. So originally the front fill would have been done with 1 LA4X, that is 7 front fill. But we didn't need the full output, right? So we simply switched to the LA2Xi and reduced their output capability because of the amplifier. However, that's fine in this particular application. And for the delays, we would have originally done it with an LA4X. That's using 2 of the 4 channels for the A10i wide. But that isn't the most economical solution. In fact, it's a little less expensive, or a good chunk less expensive, to use LA2Xi and bridge 2 of the channels for each A10i wide. And that is really going to be a better solution for this particular application to find the most economical setup for this install. So Germain, I think you had a couple more slides to really dig into what the different modes are in the speaker loading. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct, and I think it's also something that will not only highlight the capacity to for the amplifier controller to adapt to the output needs, but also some of the other aspects of the amplifier controller that make it particularly interesting for installation projects. So, all right, let's get back to it then. Should be my screen up now.
Perfect.
Good. So inside the LA2Xi, Maybe something that we should say before taking a deeper step into what's inside the L-A2Xi is in very general terms. I think at L-Acoustics, the objective is always to provide turnkey systems that gathers basically all the elements of the audio chain down from the console, let's say, to the loudspeakers. And this was already quite a step that we took ahead when we introduced the LA4 and LA8 platforms. The goal was not to provide just an amplifier, but it was to provide an intelligent platform that gives you other means than just that gives you more means than just amplifying a loudspeaker. So you had all that amplification device, but that also provides you with tools to control, to adjust, to monitor the system, and with time and with the DSP becoming more and more efficient, more and more powerful, we were able to bring way more tools and way more features within our amplified controller platforms. And this is what happened with the enhanced version with LA4X, LA12X, and all the way today to the LA2Xi. So removing the, taking a look into the chassis, we could see an amplification and a power supply stage. So it's actually the combination, I think, of Class D amplification as well as the switch mode power supply with power factor correction that gives a very high energy efficient amplified controller with the LA2Xi. And I think that's a very important aspect for installation project. An amplified controller that has low heat dissipation, that has low electrical power requirements, but that can also be usable worldwide. So that may not be relevant for one project, but that's, I think, relevant for making sure that a consultant can specify an amplified controller for any of his projects, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the US, whether it's in South America, whether it's in the other part of the world. So it's very important to be able to use the LA4X regardless of the input voltage from 100 volt to 240 volt. 240 volts, sorry, but also knowing that it's quite robust to unstable mains. So that kind of settled the basis for obviously amplification and power supply, which are one of the most important elements, I would say, of an amplifier, because this is what gives the power and the output power capability of the amplified controller. But as I mentioned, L-A2Xi is not just an amplifier; it's also a DSP. So there is a very high efficient and high power DSP integrated. As a matter of fact, as introduced before, it's the exact same DSP as there is in the LA12X, the highest output capable, output power capable amplified controller that we have in our range. And this DSP gives us tools to align our system, to modify the tonal balance of our system. It gives us to basically, gives us the tools to EQ the system as our preference. So within this equalization basis, we have the array morphing tool, which gives you the basis to shape the envelope of your line source system, to adjust the contour of your line source system. We have a set of IIR filters. We have a set of FIR filters to adjust, once again, the response of your system to your preference. And we have different tools to compensate for the air absorption tools, for instance. You can also use it to tune your system. I think we've made quite a lot of very great webinars on P1 and M1, which are the tools to help you tuning the system and designing the system. So LA2Xi is part of this calibration process directly, takes part of this calibration process directly. But LA2Xi is also a protection system. So it incorporates, just like our actually LA4X and LA12X, it incorporates a advanced protection system that we call L-Drive. which basically enables system to maximize the system performance, to maximize the system output power, but at the same time to minimize the non-linearities and all that to make sure that we have durable performance for our system. So we have regular checks of the system. LA2Xi will integrate, will supervise directly the functionality with functionalities such as the checkup for the amplified controllers. It will monitor any malfunction of the system, and this will be reported in real time within LA Network Manager. Knowing that LA Network Manager is always the platform that drives and controls and monitors all the amplified controllers that we have in our range. But there are some of the icons here that are very important as well. We are dealing with installation projects, and in these installation projects means a lot of interoperability feature that needs to be on any device to make sure that it can be controlled or it can discuss with other devices within the network. So that could be a media control in the form of maybe popular media controls such as QC systems, maybe Crestron systems as well. We have developed plugins to be able for QC designers or Crestron designers to control directly LA2Xi from, or to monitor directly LA2Xi from these platforms. We have command lines directly in SNMP for people who want to organize their media control through SNMP to control and monitor the LA2Xi as well. So all those features that really help integrators, that really help consultants, that really help people that are calibrating a system that really are directly embedded into the L-Acoustics offer with the LA2Xi. So looking finally at the output power capability of the product in 4-channel single-ended mode. So this is the 4x4 architecture mode. We have 4 channels at 640 watt each under 4 ohms. We have 4 channels at 360 watts under 8 ohms, or 4 channel at 190 watts at under 16 ohms. So those values you see, those load that are available with the LA2Xi are exactly the same ones that are available with the LA4X. It means that you can drive the same amount of loudspeakers with the LA2Xi that you can with LA4X. So if I can drive 4 X8 out of an LA4X, then I can also drive 4 X8 out of an LA2Xi. Obviously, we have the 2-channel bridge-tied load mode, which enables to transform that 4x4 into a 4x2 amplified controllers. So we have 2 output channels of up to 1260 watts at 8 ohm load. So here we can only use 8 ohm because we are bridging 2 channels together. So we cannot use the 4 ohm load anymore. But at the same time, when you bridge all 4 channels together in a parallel bridge-tied load, you can parallel the 2 bridge channels you had before, so you can reach a higher output power capable amplified controller, providing up to 2550 watts under 4 ohms, because you have paralleled the 2 channels in bridge-tied load. You are now able to use the 4 ohm load on that. Those numbers are very important, and I think they should be taken into consideration with how these values are calculated. So the way we calculate or the way we provide these values are using a sine burst for at least for an amplified controller point of view, for a long time, which is 200 milliseconds. It may not appear to be a long time to everyone, but for an amplification point of view, if you have peak notes or a very strong demand in current, then it's important to make sure that your amplified controller is able to provide you with a high output power during a long period. So this is calculated with a sine burst at over 200 milliseconds. So basically using this amplifier controller in different modes means that we have, let's say, we have to understand what it implies to the enclosure that we're connected it with. So this is a table that summarizes a little bit the different modes that we can have with the LA2Xi and how does it impact the SPL of the enclosure that we are connecting to the L2Xi. So basically the number of enclosure per LA2Xi is the same as for LA4X, but what is interesting here is to know how much of SPL reduction we have using the LA2Xi compared to a usage with LA4X or LA12X. So I'll take a rough number here or an example, X8. If we were to drive X8 with the LA2Xi, we lose 4 dB. And you've seen with Scott's project example that it's totally right with most application where the loudspeaker is used as a field system, so at a close proximity. I've myself come to many calibration of projects, and most of the time I had to reduce the quantity of energy that I had for the front field system, either for the under balcony systems or that. So that comes in perfect into the right range of numbers that we intend to lower the speakers with. X4i and 5XT do not have any SPL reduction. This is, I explained right at the beginning, that was LA2Xi was initially designed to be the companion amplified controller for these small loudspeakers. And the only speakers that we cannot drive with LA2Xi are the very large format line source systems like K2, K1, or K1SB. All right, so another important aspect of the LA2Xi, and I think that's going to be the last slide on presenting the LA2Xi before we go towards more application examples, is the network area. So when I showed you the back panel of the LA2Xi, I talked about the Ethercon connectors that were used to pass audio as well as control over AVB. So the goal, again, we can always take a step back into all that and trying to look at what is the goal behind using this new network technology. The goal is always to provide an ultimate reproduction of sound, an ever better sound performance as possible. And at L-Acoustics, we chose to use AVB to integrate AVB within our amplified controllers, as well as within other devices that we have within our catalog, to achieve this, to achieve a even greater sound reproduction, even a better greater quality of sound reproduction. And that's done through AVB as the distribution for audio. And this all comes through the under the umbrella of Milan. So I will explain a little bit these two terms. I think we have quite great webinars onto AVB and Milan as well. So if you want to know more about AVB and Milan, please check on our YouTube channel. There's a very great webinar all focused on AVB and Milan. But globally, the approach of L-Acoustics is to, as I said earlier, is to have a turnkey system where everything is built within an L-Acoustics ecosystem. The real benefit behind this is that your system will sound the same everywhere you will use it. You're going to have performance that are reproducible. You will have consistent coverage. You will have consistent performance wherever or for any show that you will use, and that's through the ecosystem of L-Acoustics. So using always the same devices from out of the console all the way down to the amplified controller. And that's beginning with a P1 as the head of this audio chain, directly outside of the console. You have the P1 that is used as a front-end processor, but then can also be used as a bridge from any input type to AVB, AES, and analog output types. that can also be used to distribute AVB throughout the system. P1, in our example here, could distribute AVB directly to the LA2Xi, or you can even have a smaller system where only your LA network manager, which is connected to the LA2Xi, will create an AVB network where every amplified controller will be receiving AVB streams and will be distributing AVB streams within the network. Or we can have a larger network where we have, as I said, P1 as the front-end processor distributing AVB, creating AVB streams and talking or distributing AVB streams throughout the network. So that can go through LS10, which are our basically proprietary AVB switch that you can use to distribute AVB streams throughout a larger network, and goes directly into the LA2Xi. So I think it's very important to underline the fact that LA2Xi is all parts, again, of this. It's an install-specific product where quality is not to be underseen or anything. It's not a compromise or anything in terms of performance. It will achieve the same acoustical performance as any other amplified controller within our range. And that's kind of due to the AVB and Milan performance. It's a deterministic network which provides superior audio quality. I think there's a whole lot to say about this. I will not talk about it too much here in this presentation. This is not the core of the study here, but it gives you quite a lot of options in terms of options, but also simplifications in terms of setting up your system into your venue. Simplification in terms of cabling, simplification in terms of redundancy, security, because LA2Xi can handle parallel distribution of network, which gives you a seamless redundancy of network. So basically, what it means is that you're sending the identical stream throughout your network, and if something happens on one of the two streams, LA2Xi will read or listen to, if you will, in AVB terms, to the other streams and pass audio as if nothing happens. So it's a primary, secondary type of networking audio, and it makes sure that LA2Xi will always receive audio and will transfer to the second network if something happens on the first one. And that without any audio glitch, without any dropout of audio, or it's basically seamless, so you don't even see that. So I think that's one of the great addition to this LA2Xi, its capability to handle seamless redundancy in terms of Milan protocol. So that kind of completes a little bit the features that are integrated into this LA2Xi. So wrapping up maybe all these features into a more applicative view, let's have a look at some of applications for LA2Xi. So starting up with this main core of use with the L2Xi, which is powering smaller loudspeakers, small loudspeakers such as the X4i, the 5XT, when used for fields, like a front field on the right-hand side picture, under balcony fields, but also as a background music system. Say I have a set of X4i or 5XT distributed through a restaurant or a small club or a bar. I need to have multiple loudspeakers running the same signal. Because of the output needs of that, I may not require the full LA4X power or even less the LA12X power. So that comes in very handy in this situation and creates a more cost-competitive package in there. Using with larger loudspeakers, such as X8 here as under balcony fields, that happened to me quite recently, actually, designing a project where X8 were the products that was needed for under balcony fields, because we needed something that provides the bandwidth, almost the full bandwidth of the main system, and something that matches the sonic performance of the main system. But because the under balcony section was not too deep, and because of the proximity of the audience, on the ceiling being quite low, or the structure of the balcony being quite low, I had to remove quite a lot of energy out of this X8. At that time, I did not have under my shoulder the L2Xi, which was a pain here, but I had to use LA4X on that topic. But I used LA4X at probably half of its capability. But another very interesting usage of this L2Xi may be something that is slightly outside of our core business, but becoming more and more interesting, especially since we launched Elisa and all these private auditoriums, private theater aspects. And L2Xi for that would, in this situation, would power CIVA and CIVA sub. Would have the 2 CIVAs and 2 CIVA subs on the ground. And because you're in very close proximity, CIVA it delivers output capability of 144 dB. So I would really not encourage anyone to play CIVA at their full capability with LA4X or LA12X in such configuration. So therefore, LA2Xi lowering the CIVA output capability by around 6 dB is perfectly adequate for such a situation. We have the bandwidth of the CIVA, we have the coverage of the CIVA, we have the clarity or the definition of the CIVA, just at 6 dB less. I will start with the right-hand side picture because it's the last one is a little bit like the off track of what we've been talking about lately. But one situation, as we introduced before, is the X12 in a small theater where we need a main left-right system, but we only have one enclosure to the left, one enclosure to the right, maybe a subwoofer to the ground, which would welcome actually the BTL, so the bridge tide load mode of the LA2Xi for those X12, or the parallel bridge tide mode, bridge tide load for the KS28 or any other subwoofer on the ground that completes the X12 system. So the image on the left side is a bit of the interesting aspect here, and it's actually something we thought about initially, but it comes out straight to us as a very good option, and actually was brought by some people in the field who have actually used LA2Xi rack mounted into their F4H rack and directly powering X8s for monitors. So some people used to do that using the 108Ps. Which at some point in time was difficult to interpolate into our main system because it could not be directly loaded into LA Network Manager or controlled and monitored into LA Network Manager, where P1 made it a bit simpler to integrate 108Ps within our L-Acoustics ecosystem. But if we want to maintain the same type of setup with the rest of the system, integrated with just one U, the LA2Xi into the F4H rack allows you to power a pair of X8 monitors at full power, bridging the LA2Xi output channels, and giving you a very portable settings for the event tours or mobile applications like that. All right, I think that's we're reaching the end of this presentation for the LA2Xi. I hope you enjoyed this quick presentation of what the LA2Xi is capable of. There's a lot more information on our website if you want to go on there in terms of specification paper, in terms of press release or any other subjects that you want to touch down or review with the LA2Xi. It's now introduced, as Scott showed, into sound vision, so you have the possibility to match power and to look at what the impact on SPL, overall SPL coverage is with your or SPL mapping is with your LA2Xi. And Scott, maybe we have questions, interesting questions. Maybe some of our moderators have received questions that needed to be answered.
Yeah, I think there's one really interesting point that you brought up and was asked was about the backup power supply. That seems like a really unique feature for an amplifier, and so that correct me, German, that backs up the network and DSP. So the only thing that has to come back on when there's a power loss, in this case, is the amplifier module itself, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. And that's actually something that's, as we've worked on very hard on it lately, it's super fast actually to bring back up the amplifier controller. I mean, we are always trying to get more and more and further into the performance of our devices. But right at the beginning, like LA4X or L12X or LA2Xi, right at the beginning, are quite fast to boot already, and recovering from a hard situation, especially in a PAVA environment, for instance, where you have emergency signals that need to be passed. We have to make sure that the systems are back on live as soon as possible, and that can be a matter of seconds. And this is what it is now with the DSP. We are saving quite a lot of seconds. We're not talking about the long times here, maybe going from 6-7 seconds to all the way down to 2 seconds. So it's a matter of quickly turning back the system alive to make sure that any kind of emergency signal can be passed on, or to continue the show as if something happened.
Yeah, it's a really neat feature, I think, and once again, pretty unique on an amplifier level to see the ability to have a secondary backup power supply for the low voltage needs. So that's really great. And I saw one question as well, and I know we talked about it briefly, but with all these different operating modes, someone was asking if it's possible to use 2 of the channels bridged and then 2 of the channels in single-ended mode. And yes, that's totally possible. And you can imagine that for a subwoofer on 2 channels bridged to get the maximum output capability, and then maybe 2 X8 for that hi-fi setup at home, right? So we can do 2 channels bridged, 2 channels single-ended. That's completely doable. And once again, we can bridge all 4 channels, or parallel bridge, if you will, for the big KS28 or SB28. And that application makes a lot of sense, where you have 1 sub, maybe for effects in an art museum or something along those lines. That could be a really good application for that. Julien, were there any questions coming in from our French-speaking part of the world? Did you have any things that you wanted to ask as well, or are you just ready to have your first taco and margarita for the day?
So I don't have any big questions so far, but I believe probably the question of when the amplifier controller is going to be available, especially during those difficult times during COVID-19, how this situation is going to affect the availability of that product. So do you have any ideas or official message maybe to tell about?
Well, it's definitely, as I think most of our industry, we are well impacted by this situation. And in terms of development process, obviously we have difficulties with shipping equipment, shipping components, or anything of the sort. So it becomes a bit difficult for us to give exact dates. However, I think we've worked really hard to make sure that we'll have the amplifier controller available in the fall of this year. So it's I mean, all this situation is impacting us quite a lot. So those are, again, wishes maybe, but very wishes close to be quite true, actually.
Excellent. Well, Julien, thank you. That was a great question. We do appreciate that question, and everyone else who joined us live today. If you're watching on YouTube, once again, don't forget to subscribe below if you haven't already. We've got over 30 webinars we've done. Please check out the back catalog. I will link in the notes of this YouTube video the reference to the Milan video that Germain was talking about. It's all about how Milan AVB audio works. That's a really great one from Etienne Cortel a few weeks ago, so please don't hesitate to do that. Alex Soto, thank you very much for joining us as always. It's great to see you. Please have a safe and healthy rest of your day, Alex, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Thank you, guys. This is a great product, and well, I've learned a lot today. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. Have a nice day.
Excellent. And Dan, good to see you as well. Thank you for joining us all the way from cold and almost sunny Wisconsin. I think summer is coming in another 3 months, so good luck for that.
Thank you, Scott.
And we'll see you soon. And German, it's great to see you as always. I can't wait to see you in person soon. And everyone else out there, please be safe, be healthy, take this time to learn, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, everyone. It was great to have you with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.